Why don't we go ahead and try to see if folks can introduce themselves. So I'm just going to go down the list. Carol Bellin, are you able to unmute your microphone and introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Carol. I'm from Missoula, Montana. I don't know what else to say. I'm a member of Missoula Friends Meeting.
Maybe we'll just leave it at that for now, because it might be good to kind of dive into have a little more time for the substance of the questions. So I'm going to ask Debbie Townsend, would you introduce yourself?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. All right. So all is well. Debbie Townsend, Eastside Friends Meeting in Bellevue, Washington.
Very good. Thank you so much. Paulette, would you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Paulette Litz, and I'm from Napa Sonoma Friends Meeting.
Great, thank you. And then how about Rebecca?
I'm Rebecca Shenaloo, and I'm from Chico Friends Meeting.
Very good, thank you. Scott, would you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Scott McLeod from San Francisco Friends Meeting, Western Shore Little Meeting in its care.
Great, thank you. Good to see you. Ted Wardwell, can you unmute yourself and introduce yourself?
I'm Ted Wardwell from Flagstaff Friends Meeting.
Great, welcome, welcome. And last on the list is Tim.
Hi, Mary and everybody else. I'm Tim Tullup from Durango Friends Meeting.
All right, very good. Well, I appreciate all of you coming here, and I've gotten a couple emails from people who can't make it and who have concerns in their meetings that they're eager to read the notes from our conversation tonight. So I am glad that you're here. I'm going to try to screen share the document here. Oh, let's see, let me do this. Okay. What I'd like to do is maybe we could just have just like a minute of worship. And then I'll go ahead and read this first set of questions and keep an eye on the clock, and at about a little shy of the halfway to the whole time, I'll sort of try to shift our attention to the second set of questions. Okay, so I'm going to ask us to take a minute to just center. I know I need that. All right, well, thank you all for that. So I'm hoping that we'll spend the next 20 or 25 minutes or 30 considering the kind of the speed factor of electronic communications, which in Quaker culture is, a little dissonant. So the way I kind of was thinking about it when I put together the invitation was to, first consider that electronic communications allow us to connect with each other and resources right now and skip the time and effort of travel. So I'm very interested to hearing about the pluses and minuses of that and kind of fixes. So how does your meeting benefit from the speed of electronic communication? And how does this speed interfere with love and unity in your meeting? Carol, do you want to share? Please share.
I guess I will say that it has benefited us in terms of we send out a weekly email to everyone about our upcoming event, and it's making us go. I'm distracted by all the keyboards.
Yeah. I think let's just a second. So Lawrence, something really strange is happening with your audio connection. I'm not able to mute you, and your typing is quite
loud.
quite. Oh, well, let's see. Where did you go? Oh, there you go. Okay. Well, so I'm Lawrence, I'm wondering if maybe you could exit out and re-enter. You've just got a really odd connection. Oh wait, you muted yourself. Okay, great. Okay. All right.
So I'm gonna go ahead. So I'll just say that we, I think it's both a benefit and a detraction that we are giving people less time to put things on their schedule. We're sort of relying on, oh, I forgot to mention this, and so here we're going to do this on Sunday, when it's Wednesday, and sending that out by email or reminders. So it's a problem of short notice, and then it's complicated by the fact that we have a minority of mostly elderly who have decided that computers are just not worth it to them, and so they get left out because we're moving to this really short notice kind of a way of operating, and there's not even time if we wanted to print out we're getting into a bad habit. So there's no time to even print out a notice and mail it to the people that have dropped out of using electronics. So that's a little bit of a problem. That's all I have for now.
Great. Not that the situation's great, but it sounds familiar. Yeah, go ahead, Rebecca.
Okay, can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So we had a committee put together a pretty good email procedure policy type list guidelines. And we had two people for the longest time that were the holdouts, and they have both figured out how to get email, and one of them is checking it at the library. And I don't feel like we've had too many issues around speed being the problem. I think that one thing that we made really clear in our guidelines is that we are to avoid making decisions over email, and that requires a face-to-face. And then the main use of email is for information sharing. And so the place where we've run into a gray area is in surveying people. So, the Witness and Service Committee wants to know what's most important to you. They're not making a decision. They're gathering information. So in their point of view, it was information gathering. And yet there were people who were very put off by the idea of surveying for people's input by email. So, they actually used a WooFoo form. So that's one of the things that we have struggled with. I think we all like the information that we're able to share, but the struggle has been with a couple of the gray areas that it has created. I think I'll stop there for now. Oh, go ahead.
Can you describe if the nature of the concern about a survey by email?
Well, when you write a survey, you do in some ways, some things were left out and some things were left in what was chosen to be put on the survey. And there were people who felt that if they would have been present, they would have worded things differently, and that maybe it was biased before it even, went out, and that sort of thing.
Okay, great. Thank you. So Tim and Ted have raised their hands. So Tim, Why don't you go ahead and see if you can get yourself unmuted?
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to Carol's observation about older members and attenders of the meeting feeling like they're not connected when folks are going digital. And I just like to point out the irony of the flip side of that is that the younger friends don't go analog. And if you even email, for example, my college-age daughter doesn't like to do email. She does her in connecting other ways. So there's a span of needs in terms of communication that make it all very complex. And a good example is that Robert and I are part of the Durango Friends web team, and we run the web page. And that's only been a recent development. Prior to that, I was, assembling the print actually / PDF email newsletter. And I finally said, this is redundant. If I'm going to do all this work, let's just put it on the web. But it's interesting to try and balance between the generational needs of I need it in print or I need someone to call me on the phone to I'd rather you text me than email me kind of thing. So it presents a lot of unique challenges in terms of finding the best way to reach the most people.
How do you have some systems in place, or you just go by your gut?
Well, we have the website, and Robert and I have been diligently marketing that as a go-to place for the most current information on events and information related to our meeting. But our clerks and other folks do use email to send out announcements and whatnot. And then, of course, we have a whiteboard right in the entryway of our meeting house where you can catch information there, too, if you happen to show up in the meeting. So we try to accommodate people as many ways as we can, but to my knowledge at this time, I don't think we have anything in print that anybody is formally producing. We've pretty much gone all digital, or you see it on the whiteboard at the meeting house or hear it from a friend.
Great, thank you. And Ted, you've got your hand up here. Do you want to unmute yourself?
We do have a website, but it's in transition. We had a really good, professor of electronic communications who put it together. It was a beautiful website, but trying to get her to actually work on it occasionally because she's very busy was a problem. So we're transitioning into a slightly less amazing, but probably more usable form. So that's still up in the air. We do use email fairly extensively. We have a listserv that general announcements to, members of the meeting use. We've been having some discussion as to what goes on that, whether if a member has a strong leading that they want to nourish it, do those things go on there? Right now, we're encouraging people, if they have that, to set up their own list and then work that so that it's not just there are some members in the meeting who aren't going to want to use it, so or be interested in it. So that seems to be working. I'm also part of the continuing committee for Arizona Half Yearly, and I think it's a little ironic to talk about the problem of speed, because when we start working on half yearly stuff, we'll have an in-face meeting, and we actually have meeting for worship, and you can get to see all the nice nonverbal communication, which for me is, and most humans really is essential. And then something will come up and we'll have this stack of emails, one thing at a time. It takes a week to, resolve something that would take 5 minutes if we were together. So it's, that's a problem for me. It's just, okay, how do we get that? I've been trying to encourage Skype, and we've had one Skype meeting, but so far that's all. I'm still working on that.
Yep, me too. I did notice in the the chat here that Rebecca was asking if everyone could send copies of their meetings guidelines for electronic communications, and that's a terrific idea. I will, when I send the notes out, ask again if folks would send those to me, and I can put a page together on our website. We've got a library now where I can, you know, stuff all sorts of stuff. So I can actually make a page that can link to as many sets of guidelines as folks are willing to share. So that's a great idea, Rebecca. Thank you. Yeah, Debbie, I'll go ahead and unmute people because that's my job.
Okay. I'm wearing a couple of hats. You can't see any of them, but first of all, for East Side, we do have an email list, and it's marvelous for things like, you know, I was supposed to bring snacks on Sunday, but I'm sick, so who can bring snacks? That kind of thing, for announcements of things that are going on around town and so forth. The problem I've noticed there, it's kind of related to the speed thing. It's the expecting instant response, and the layer of, I'm not even sure how to describe the look on someone's face when they say, but I sent an email out to everyone on Friday, and here it is on Sunday, and you didn't check your email yesterday, and you don't have an answer for me. Sort of, well, true. Sometimes I have other things to do than read my emails. So there's that kind of built-in expectation that we have for ourselves. The other hat that I'm wearing, and Alice is wearing also, same hat, is the NPYM committee on the discipline hat. We've been trying to work on our Book of Faith and Practice, and we were going to include some guidelines for staying Quakerly while using electronic communications. And the first draft that we sent out got very mixed reactions. So I would be very glad to see other meetings guidelines for use of email, use of listserv, use of website, this, that, and the other. We really like to see what other friends have already play tested on these issues. So thank you for setting up. Thank you in advance for setting up that library for us. We'll use it.
Yeah, well, I sent your draft that I got last summer of those guidelines out with the invitation to this meeting.
Okay, so people have seen them.
I hope. I mean, they had the opportunity. I just wanted to check that wasn't a mistake.
No, that's okay. We're still taking comments. So
yeah, I mean, it did say draft in the date. Could you, off the top of your head, what are the main kind of points of contention?
Ooh, Alice, can you help?
Alice, unfortunately, is having microphone problems.
Okay.
I mean, I'll unmute Alice, but she didn't.
Oh, I think I'm on.
Yes.
Hey, people.
Oh, you are. Great.
Hey, Alice, hello.
People now.
Yay.
I had the interesting experience of like, this is what it would be like to be deaf in meeting when people are talking.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no kidding.
Yeah. So I think the reactions that we're trying to sort out with this appendix is, some of it is just tone, I mean, and it's sort of sorting out the, you know, assumptions about how much people know about this or are going to participate in this. And it's just a wide range of people reading it from different points of view and ironing it out. That's a big part of our problem, I think. And then just trying to condense the steps because we don't want to have a tome.
I think there was also a little bit of pushback, concern, whatever word you want to use for it, on the point that was already raised here this evening, that, you know, email is really not a good mechanism for friendly discernment and decision making. That email is good for some things and really not good for other things. And I think there was some pushback from people who basically live and breathe electronic communication, that what do you mean certain things need to be where everybody is in the same space at the same time? whether that's in person or on the phone or a situation like this, I can see how it would be fine for Quaker discernment. But email, with its kind of stretching out the time frame for responses, or I'm going to respond to this one, but then something else comes in 5 minutes later that I might not even see. And how do you gather the sense of the meeting when it's going on that way? So that, I think, was one of the things that we got some questions about. So I'm glad to get the gathered wisdom from this group.
Alice, if you started to say something, you got cut off.
Oh, sorry, I just wanted to say, I mean, I think there are generational perspectives that are really at play here in a big way. So just sort of respecting how much experience one has had with these things and is willing to have, and how we approach one another about them.
So Rebecca, hold on just a second. Donna, you joined us late, and I wonder if I unmuted your microphone. I wonder if you'd introduce yourself.
Yes, Mary, thank you, and I apologize for being late.
Oh, that's right.
I'm from Vernon Monthly Meeting. I'm an attender in the Okanagan Valley, British Columbia, Canada, and we've been talking about starting an online presence among our meeting. We're a widespread geographic group and throughout British Columbia, Canada, and I really wish I'd caught this discussion at the beginning, because I think some of the issues certainly would have addressed, and even just catching the bit that I've caught. Some of the things are certainly what we're finding. There's definitely seems to be a generational difference. We don't have a lot of young people coming regularly. I don't go regularly to meeting myself. And sensing a bit of defensiveness, a little bit of concern that an online discussion isn't Quakerly, isn't Quaker, and it's trying to break through that, because I'm finding more and more what kind of wonderful resources the Quaker community has online. It's very rich, and I think it could really benefit our monthly meeting and bring us closer together. There's been myself and a couple of other people who are trying to get something going online, similar to the Western Friends online regular weekly get-together. And what we're finding out first thing is, and this may have been talked about already in this discussion, the different technologies members and attenders have within our monthly meeting. And it's really bogged us down. We've been talking about Skype, but not everyone has access to Skype. Not everyone has the broadband. And some people are barely using email. So there's a group of us who really want this online discussion to include everyone, but there's also some of us saying, you know what, that may not be realistic. There may be only some people who will be using the online, at least initially. And so we're working through these issues. It's taken quite a long time. It's been about a year so far when we've been mucking about with learning about technology. And I think it's going to take a while longer, but I'm sticking in there. I really think this would be useful. And Joy Conrad Rice, I think, Mary, you have been in contact with her. She was the one who fairly recently put me, emailed me the information about what Western Friends is doing. So my reaction was, Eureka, this is it. This is what we're aiming for. So I'm really keen to learn more.
Yeah, well, I appreciate a comrade in foolhardy adventurousness. We really are diving into some troubled waters with this. We've already lost a couple participants on this conversation because of mismatches in technology. It can be really frustrating. Rebecca had something she wanted to share. Just a second, I wanted though interject that if Donna, if you or if anyone else on this call right now has any suspicion that I don't know your email address, which Donna, I'm not sure I do. If y'all would just send me a quick email and say you would like the notes from this meeting. I have been producing notes and actually putting together a video recording. It's not good cinema, but you can actually, share the recording of this meeting with anyone that would want to watch it. So thank you. And I'm going to mute you, Donna, and I'm going to unmute you, Rebecca.
Okay, well, I don't want to speak too much. If others had a chance, want to share, I hope they'll hold their hand up and I'll be quiet. But I wonder, on this question of Quakerliness, how much others have used things like this or Skype for meetings where discernment is necessary, because I find it very hard to sink down and get centered and feel that spiritual presence and unity. I don't know, those things you can't put into words very easily. I have a hard time doing that electronically. And I'm wondering what other people's experiences are.
Tim, go ahead.
Durango Friends use technology mostly to share information, but to my knowledge, we really haven't used it in any particular form for discernment. And I agree with comments that are made earlier that work like that is best done in person whenever possible. I've participated in some phone meetings with IMYM, where we've attempted to conduct, business that needs discernment, and I agree it's very difficult. I think the bigger question, though, for Robert and I and folks involved with the Durango website and Communicaitons and whatnot, actually centers around a couple of things. First of all, in one short phrase, what is, digital simplicity? When we first decided to pursue having a strong web presence, there was a lot of discussion about what should be and what should not be included. How do we represent ourselves? And as an unprogrammed meeting, we have a wide, diverse interpretation of who we are. So it presented some interesting challenges in that regard. And I actually teach computer skills to young people, and one of our catchphrases is the internet is forever. Whatever you put out there, you have to assume is going to be out there forever. So in the early days of putting this together, it was quite daunting to come to terms with that. And at some point, we just started doing a little bit of risk taking about what kind of content to include and what not to include. And two general themes that Robert and I work with, we're a web team of two, are the public face of, what will people who aren't a part of the meeting find when they come to our website? If they're curious about the Quaker experience, if they're curious about the Durango meeting, what kinds of things can we share with them that will help them further their curiosity and maybe actually come down and worship with us? That's one facet of our web presence. And the other is serving the needs of the meeting. And we have a strong core of regular attenders and members, but we also, like some people have described, have a lot of people who are spread out at a distance and seldom are able to actually make it to the meeting house. but would like to be involved. So those are kind of the two themes that we wrestle with as we decide what kind of content to present and how to present it, how to market it to the community, and how to market it to our own Quaker meeting folks. What's our public face? How does the website serve the meeting? One of the things Robert mentioned in a side note here, he's having some audio problems, is we use our website also as one of our primary sources for the archive, for keeping track of the history of the meeting as well. So lots of interesting things to consider, but we really don't do much in the way of discernment with technology. We like to get together and do that.
So other experiences with just attempting discernment at a distance?
The instance that I thought of is, I know that sometimes people are talking about trying not to travel so much for yearly meeting. So committees are trying different technologies to meet. Yeah, I think that'd be very difficult. I can see why people are speechless.
Okay, Debbie, I'll unmute you.
Thank you. Again, in our yearly meeting committee, we've met in person as much as we can, but I hear what Rebecca is saying about people not wanting to travel too much to reduce their footprint if they can. We've been pretty careful in our yearly meeting committee to distinguish what kinds of discussion and what kinds of decisions we can make when we're on the phone together, because we've mostly done it by conference calling. What kind of discussion, what kind of decisions we can make when we're on the phone, and what things really need to wait until we're together in a room where we can all be worshiping together and not be distracted by the phone equipment or whatever's going on. And there have been times when we've discovered in the phone conversation that things are getting just too complicated doing it this way, and we'd better hold this topic until the next time we're all in the same place at the same time. And since we all know that that's likely to happen, can happen, will probably happen, it works out pretty well. It wouldn't work well if there were any kind of time pressure on the decisions, but then Quakers never work very well when there's time pressure on the decisions. So that's just a thing to be aware of for any meeting that's trying this out for distance discernment. Is some things you think it's going to be okay. You think it's not going to be terribly controversial. This will be straightforward. It isn't, and it's really hard to tell over the phone whether someone's grinding their teeth or not, or whether their face has gone blank because they're in shock about something that someone just said. You have to have clues, and you have to be willing to say, it just feels like we can't do this. We thought we could, and we can't. Let's hold it until the next time we're together.
Are you at all able to generalize the sort of the kinds of decisions that would lean towards being all right to do by phone versus the kinds of things that are, seem clearly not appropriate for that?
Alice, help. I don't know if I can really generalize that.
Just like meeting times, do we want, that kind of following up on lists? Did you do this? Did you do that? Do we want to meet it this time?
That's all fine, yeah.
Things had pretty good success with. And we used this Zoom thing the last time, and it was kind of okay. This is amazing to me right now how this works. It seems like when we talk about speed, the general evolution of this technology and people learning use it is gonna go really fast. And anything we say today in a year is gonna be irrelevant. That's a frustration that I have.
That's true. Yeah. Mary, to answer your question a little more, what Alice says is right. Certain topics are obviously much better than others. With other things, it's, I don't know how many of you on this patchwork screen that I'm looking at have been clerk of your committee or clerk of your meeting. You can have an agenda and you can never predict which topic is going to hit the wrong chord and something's going to go fizz in your meeting for business. And it's hard enough to manage that when you're all in someone's living room or all in your worship room or whatever, but it's very, very hard to manage it. And manage is even the wrong word. It's hard to cope with it on staying in a friendly discernment mode if you can't see people, but it might work better with this kind of Zoom thing. Even then, I'm not entirely sold on it. There's something about being in the same space where it's one of those mysterious Quaker things that happen about sharing your spirit.
So, I'm not sure when I'm supposed to talk or not, and I'm just butting in, but there's also something about, like, we can look at these pictures. I can only see 4 people at a time, but even if I could see everybody at the same time, there's something about all of the whistles and the squeaks and all of that is just so distracting. There's no way that we can all share the same silence.
Mm-hmm. That's really true.
I'll just make a little side comment here. And Scott's got a comment that he wants to share too. You actually have the power. If you look in the upper right-hand corner of your display, there is a toggle between what they call gallery view and speaker view. So if you click on it, it's gonna go from the kind of Brady Bunch view to the one person who's talking, dominating the visual space, and back again. So just a little sidebar. So Scott, I'm gonna invite you to share on this topic, and then maybe we'll kind of shift gears a little to the second set of questions that I cooked up. So Scott.
Hi, and thanks for this opportunity to come into conversation with everyone in this Quaker setting. I posted sort of San Francisco, my understanding of San Francisco Friends meeting, sort of what I appreciated about it in response to the queries in the text chat there a little while ago. I've had a fair amount of experience, I guess, with online Quaker process in a variety of ways, and in some ways in relation to discernment. I found it really interesting to be in a Quaker meeting on Sea Turtle Island for a year or two in Second Life a couple of years ago. And it was a kind of discernment. The avatars were interesting, these little 4 or 5 inch figures on the screen that represented you and I from all over the world. And so I'm inspired by these technologies and want friends to find a way to find their greatness as well. And I think some structure can be very helpful in that. And so I'm not sure what that, my experience with Quaker online process, I can't point to any like far-reaching, exciting examples. But I did post just a blog post of mine in the text just now. It's the most maybe inspiring Google Hangouts I know of, and it's a Harvard professor named Karen Brennan. She's in the Graduate School of Education, and it's kind of a model for what office hours in group video might be, as a kind of interesting process of discernment around what was going on in their course. She has a digital focus, especially. So in terms of, I think structure can help, but it's kind of open-ended, Grateful Dead, Raga-esque Quaker meeting structure that can be cultivated by you and I, but we have to learn how to cultivate it. So thank you.
Thank you for opening up the conversation more broadly. Okay, so I'm going to find the second set of questions. So we've got sort of the reality of moving through and navigating our relationships with each other with these technologies and trying to feel our way forward to ways of being with each other through electronic media that you know, feel like they serve life and serve our Quaker, strengthening our Quaker communities. Another kind of angle on our experience within communications through electronic media concerns the permanentness of it that Tim was mentioning earlier, that it's permanent. And I know that there are, you know, very kind of hurtful conversations that can happen online for some reason more easily than face-to-face. Well, not for some reason. I mean, it actually makes a lot of sense to me. And tragically, though, there they are, you know, kind of pinned down forever. So electronic communications allow us to broadcast our messages everywhere. How does your meeting benefit from the ability to publish your truth where anyone can find it? And how has your meeting been hurt by messages or information that has been shared too widely? Both outside the meeting and inside the meeting, I would mention. And what practices have you tried, innovations that you've developed to help friends discern which messages or information is best kept private?
Mary, maybe I could start off. We're not there yet. As far as I can see, this is a long-standing monthly meeting. It's 30, 40 years old, but online is very, very new. Definitely using email for pretty basic communication about upcoming aspects of the monthly meeting. But as far as discussion online, it's not really happening yet. So I would say we haven't really addressed those issues. Just to back up, I wanted to mention what Debbie was allude to what Debbie was saying about the challenges of when you're having a discussion, how to read the feel of the meeting, not maybe being right there in person. I just wanted to draw attention, and I did write a little message on the chat. The Coursera free online university offerings, if you're familiar with them, they have a wonderful virtual teacher program, series of courses designed for teachers doing courses online, classes online with the students, but very useful to what we're talking about with Quakers. And what they stress is the importance of using programs that may have emoticon style things that people can do. Even if you're not talking directly, you could put a thumbs up, a thumbs down, a smiley face, a not smiley face, which, you know, may not be the best, but it helps towards giving the clerk, the rest of the meeting, a sense of where you're coming from, what you're thinking. So I just want to throw that in. I know I've gotten off topic with that, but
I should have said that it's fluid. I think, you know, we just want to capture people's experience and ideas, really. So yeah, there's no off-topicness here. Ted, do you want to please share your thoughts?
Yeah, well, this is a subject we've been, concerned about for several years now, since we really started getting into that, electronics side of things, because we've had people who are very aware of the fact that that forever clause can be a real bite you in the rear end sort of thing. One thing that I've been interested in is, well, what do you got to hide? Well, the fact is there are people out there who can use very innocuous information to do really nasty things to you. And so we've been quite cautious about what we put out there. It's a part of our continuing conversation about what goes on the website, what goes on the listserv and so forth. Mostly the communications between members happens outside of the meetings, system of communication. So that's, it can be something that's, a problem, and we don't know about it because it's outside the meeting communication, but we really haven't run into that too much. But yeah, I think it's really necessary to have everybody on board, again, discernment about what we're willing to do as far as the meeting goes, just because we don't want something nasty coming about because it was done through the meeting.
Yeah, go ahead, Tim.
Looking at your questions there, I don't think we've had any huge controversies in terms of publishing things that we wish we hadn't. And the only thing that comes to my mind directly is that some of our members need to learn how to use blind carbon copying and have sent out everybody's email address in plain sight. And then kind of an ongoing question about, appropriate content and whatnot. Robert and I, we are the gatekeepers for what goes on the website. So we collaborate about twice a month, managing the content there with the guidance of worship and ministry and the clerics and whatnot. But on the email list, several people have access to the meeting's email addresses, and there have been questions about a attender or a member is connected with another organization and wants to advertise an event that is semi-Quakerly or has some kind of connection, and then there have been issues about discernment, whether it's appropriate to share that mailing list for those kinds of topics. Also, as other folks have alluded to, is we're working very hard to protect people's personal information, but it's kind of a rock and a hard place because once you're out there, and if you're not going to share enough of yourselves, then you're not going to get many new visitors, or you're not going to communicate well. So it's a difficult issue to try to strike a balance with some people who are very concerned about strictly controlling their privacy in the 21st century. So that will just be an ongoing challenge in that regard. But every day that we work with it, we seem to get more comfortable with where we're at and the way we present ourselves. And I'm pretty sure that if we were to survey the number of guest attenders we've had over the last 3 years or so, I would venture to say a majority of them have come based on web contact. We used to have an ad in the Saturday religion section of newspaper, and I don't recall ever getting anybody attending based on that. We're now actually advertising our website in a weekly publication in Durango. I'm not sure if we're getting much feedback on that yet. That's one thing we haven't done with our website is any analytics yet. Maybe down the road we'll get that far. But it's interesting to kind of sort all that out. But all in all, as being fairly new to having the website, it's only been a year or two since we've been kind of going at it with effort and presence that, it seems to be flowing pretty smoothly. And we report to the meeting on a regular basis what we're up to, and solicit their feedback whenever we can get it from them. And it seems to be paying off slowly but surely.
Great. Wonderful that you've got experience to share. So Deb and then Carol. So Deb, I'm going to unmute you.
I just wanted to point out the dangers that other people have already hinted at anyway, about sharing email addresses to the great wide world. And also there are some people rightly concerned about photographs, especially photographs of children, that can unfortunately be bad. There can be bad outcomes for that. So you have to be very careful about protecting the people and not saying, oops, I forgot. I didn't remember that you didn't want photos of your kid to be published. Well, you know, that the barn door may be closed, but the horse is gone. So that's just another thing to be concerned about.
Yeah, thank you. So Carol, I have unmuted you.
Okay, so a couple of things. I would just say that people's concerns about privacy have definitely held us back from utilizing our website. I'm hoping that will change, but it's been so slow. We have a website through Quaker Cloud, and this summer my 19-year-old son is going to take over maintenance of that, and I'm hoping that will improve, get more people using it. But we've been hanging out there, you know, for like 2 years, and I definitely see the potential, but it's so slow. And one of the problems is you get bored with doing the maintenance when when we still haven't gotten anywhere close to critical mass usage of it yet by the members. Because we're also, sadly, simultaneously really hitting an aging point in our meeting. That's definitely influencing it. But you know, I'm ever hopeful and optimistic that, you know, maybe the young adult friends maybe there'll be some spark that will change that. One of the concerns, you know, I'd love to use it more for archiving minutes. So far, minutes are circulated by email, and people have been making efforts to replace personal names in the minutes with a friend proposed this or a friend said that, which I find a little frustrating, but you know, if people want to protect their privacy and whatever they're saying in business meeting, that's, I guess, the tradition of how minutes are kept. One of the things I'm hoping to develop this summer is, well, one of the problems we have is we have a lot of attenders. We don't do much in terms of even talking amongst ourselves about moving people along into membership. So we have all these attenders that come and go, and in order to find out what we're doing, we have a guest book and say, would you like to, you know, be on our listserv? But then, yeah, then we have all these people that maybe come 2 or 3 times, and they're lingering then on the listserv, and that's a little bit of a concern. And the final thing that I want to say, you know, I often think, well, we have a meeting house. It's not getting much rental usage. One of the reasons I really advocated for getting a website was so that we could put pictures of it and a calendar, and so people could self-serve and see if the meeting house would be available for rental. It hasn't been used much, and one of the reasons is that we don't have internet there. And you know, I was the one pushing, you know, to spend the money. It's not a lot, but to invest the money in the, you know, in the website, in the cloud website. And now I'm a little afraid to propose. I really don't know how I feel about whether I would want the meeting house wired for internet, because I certainly think one of the ways to get people to use it more is if we could demonstrate it with each other, you know, and the logical place to do that is when we are all together at the meeting house but must admit myself that I have a kind of a feeling like it's kind of a sacred space without being wired. And I'm kind of curious if other people's meeting houses are wired for the internet, and a little worried if young adult friends would sit there with their phones texting during the meeting for worship or not. So I don't know if anybody has any feedback about whether their meeting house is wired or not. It would certainly make it much more desirable as a rental space. And we feel terrible that we have a building that is in a community that is sitting idle most of the week. I'm going to sign off now.
We have just had this conversation about wiring the meeting house last week. And what we realized is that so many people have access to the internet through their phones. And someone said, well, I have a hotspot on my phone. And so someone has been sent out to find if our laptop, which we have in our office, could actually pick up, if it has the right hardware to pick up on a hotspot, or what might be involved in someone bringing an iPad or something that could log into someone's phone hotspot, so that we don't have to wire the meeting house. But if we had an event where, we know most of us are going to be there, several of us have hotspot options on our phone, we could just use a hotspot. That was a thought that came out. I don't know if it's going to go anywhere because someone's researching it now, but we might look into that.
Palo Alto meeting, which is my meeting, in the heart of Silicon Valley, did, with much kind of painful discussion, decide to take advantage of the very available high-speed internet in our town. But it was not an easy decision. We made it a few years ago. So, I mean, we have had pretty decent wireless, wired into the building for a few years. And I mean, I can't imagine going back, but I do remember how hard it was deciding to do that. Other folks on the brink of this decision or have already made it?
Vernon Monthly Meeting, British Columbia, Canada, has traditionally held their meetings in a residence, someone's home, their living room, for many, many years. They have just within the last 6 months moved to a more public office meeting space. So that will probably be something we'll be addressing fairly soon.
Yeah, Tim.
We use hotspots when we bring out laptops to the meeting house to share the website and whatnot. I don't think there are any plans in the future, in the near future at all, to wire the meeting house. I don't think the expense and the long-term obligation of managing that kind of system is worth our time at this point. But as I've been reading some of the chat comments and listening to people speak, one of the things that occurred to me, and I know Robert and I have talked about this at times, is taking on the challenge of building a web presence can be really very rewarding, in the sense that as you continue to build your content and keep track of the events in your meeting and connect to other Quaker organizations like FCNL, AOC, Western Friend, IMYM, and all of that, and begin to really detail how your meeting works and what it does and what your people are doing and what's of interest to them and how their testimonies speak. It really speaks to the richness of a meeting's experience in a way that other mediums really can't do justice to. A newsletter or an email can't really speak to the wide variety of things that can come out of a monthly meeting. And for me, being deep in it with my partner Robert, we're in the nuts and bolts of what's going on in the meeting as we try to keep up with content and features and information and whatnot. And so we have a front row seat to the richness of our meetings experience. And I would encourage people, as they consider all these real good questions about privacy and connectivity and all that sort of thing, to consider that possible benefit that with a web presence, you can begin to really gather the wide variety of experience and opportunity that your meeting might present that it might not be visible otherwise. So I'm grateful for being able to observe that working on our website.
Well, at the risk of being kind of a downer, I want to ask the question about sort of just kind of kindness online. Palo Alto meeting had I can think of at least, well, I can think of one big example, and I'm sure there's been smaller ones, of on our listserv of a woman who was really just on fire about the Israel-Palestine issue and really feeling it for the Palestinians in a very forceful way, or expressed it in a very forceful way. And we've got quite a few members of our meeting who by upbringing are Jewish, and it was a real problem. And I guess I wasn't part of the electronic communications committee, but I understand that she was requested to start her own list, and some people left our meeting. I got a call today from someone who couldn't be on this call, who doesn't have, is going to get a new laptop, so we'll be able to join these in the future, but it's really looking forward to the notes. So I guess I just want to re-ask that, because I know that there is another meeting in the West that is actively contending right now with a rather unkind conversation by email. I don't know what it's about, but she was pretty upset and was, kind of hoping to get some ideas. So if anyone's got any wisdom to share, I'd sure appreciate it. I know this other friend would also. Yeah, go ahead, Rebecca.
Well, written in our guidelines is that our listserv is not for everybody to use or to have conversations. You need to be a clerk of a committee, and if other committee members have stuff they want to share, or if for some reason the clerk is not tech savvy enough to do it, they can delegate someone else. But ultimately, there's this idea that the clerk sort of filters, what will be posted. And there have been people who have stretched that a little bit because they're a clerk, but they've also got their own thing going on. And so they post information about it. And we've had someone, told that if you want to post that kind of stuff, you need to create an email list of your own from the friends. We have a hard copy email list, and you have to give people an option to opt out. And she has really done well with that. So I would think it would be very problematic if everybody thinks they can just post whatever. Ours is much more specific to forwarding messages from FCNL and forwarding, messages that have already been crafted and messages that are informative from the committees. The place where we have fallen into difficulty is often people's personal emails to a committee or personal emails between each other on Quaker Business. And there's one person in particular who is just the greatest and the most devoted, and yet there's something about her tone on email that comes across so directive, and that I don't know how to, it's a whole nother level of eldering, isn't it, to figure out how to manage that.
Mary, I've been very interested lately in the role of a formalized code of conduct. organizations, both Quakers and outside of Quakers, situations arise where people are having a difference of opinion and don't seem to be able to get past it. Taking the time prior to, as a group, come up with something that works for them, that is a code of conduct, how we are going to behave in doing this work online.
Mhm. Great idea. Yes, Carol, I've unmuted you.
Just quickly, I would just say that locally, our meeting has made it very clear to everyone that we don't want to send out more than one email per week. And we just keep saying that so that people know. And in terms of our monthly meeting, it's even less than that. It's like maybe 4 emails a year. And so that forces people to go through the clerk. And it's a discipline, you know, to think ahead about if you really want to communicate something to other people, you have to think ahead, and it has to be consolidated with other messages so that people are not getting loads and loads of emails. And that way the clerks do have the authority to filter.
Okay, so let's take one more on this, and then I want Rebecca to shift us over to the question of Facebook. So Debbie.
I'm just curious for this group. We talked about, you know, eldering, and the concept of eldering online is a brand new thing for me to think, and I'm just wondering how that would work. My instinct, and you can see, gray hair instinct, is eldering should not be done electronically. Oh, please, no. Eldering, I would hope, needs to be in person so that, you know, so that you do have that presence together. Because if one person's email tone is offensive, I can just imagine what the tone of an eldering email would come across as, and it's not going to be pretty. So I don't really have any experience with this, but I would just hope that I'll be interested to see in these guidelines that are being posted of how you would handle, like, who is supposed to decide this person's tone was off and we should talk to him or her or them, but we shouldn't do it with more electronic communication.
Well, I don't want to commit or promise, but I'm pretty sure, you know, maybe around this time next year, we'll kind of revisit this set of questions and conversations. I do hear the friend who said that things are changing by the minute, so it would be really fruitful to come back to all these questions again. So Rebecca, do you want to get us just kind of pose the question about Facebook?
Well, I really appreciate what Tim said about the good things that can come out of this. Quaker Speak on Facebook is like one that has just, I've learned so much about Quakerism from Quaker Speak. I love it. I love seeing the people from all over. But our Facebook page, our meeting Facebook page, some individual has to set it up, right? Is anybody who have a Facebook page have it any other way? Because I was the person who said, we're doing these Quaker Way public programs. We need to have a Facebook page. We all agreed we needed a Facebook page, and I just built one and started announcing stuff. Then I started sharing Quaker Speak stuff. You know, then I liked, you know, FCNL, and now their stuff is popping up there. And I'm realizing I'm really bad at it too. Like, there's so much more that if I were more disciplined about it, I could be sharing there. But it's a committee of one, really, when it comes to deciding what's going on the Facebook page. And I'm wondering, do other people do discernment with a committee before, you know, hitting like, or are they, is it like me where you're going, I think this is going to be fine?
Yeah, if I could comment to that, Rebecca. We actually had a situation fairly recently where we wanted to do something. We had somebody who had set up the Facebook page, and he was just going to jump to posting a picture of a group of us onto Facebook. And, you know, one of the people in the group said, wait a minute, I actually am involved in doing some pretty high profile stuff internationally. And I'm not so sure I am comfortable with, you know, having me plastered on Facebook. So he was ready to just jump right in and post, and we were, okay, hold on, wait a minute. So yeah, definitely we've been having to do a little bit of discernment, for sure.
Well, we're very close to the top of the hour, and it'd be nice to save the last minute, which might be after the top of the hour, but not too far after, for just a little speed worship. So are there other thoughts that didn't have a question, that there was an obvious place to share the thought? Are there thoughts that are feeling unshared in anyone's mind that please share them if that's so. So Alice.
I'm just remembering that in the discussions between the Faith and Practice Committee and other people who looked at our guidelines, I mean, this question of like, if it's on the internet, it's there forever and it's public, and so maybe what I don't want out in the big world. But then this person came back to us and said, well, yes, but Quaker truth, Quaker integrity, Quaker time, as impossible as that really is, you know, aren't we always telling the truth? And so why are we afraid to have it out in the world? And so that's just a question up against in trying to write these guidelines from somebody who is more comfortable in the electronic world. But it just was a big question to me that I wanted to just bring up.
Thank you. And Ted.
One thing we need to keep in mind is the Quakers are people, and it would be nice if we were all perfect Quakers, but I've never really met a perfect one. And there are people who have short fuses about some things. You know, just talking about, you know, the previous thing where we didn't want this discussion of things in notes. You know, even by not having them attributed, there may be somebody in a completely different meeting that's going to go, oh, they're talking about me. Because it's not that uncommon an occurrence in meetings to have people disagree with each other. You know, it's one of the problems, I think, electronic communication is that, especially with email, it's very difficult to tell what a person's tone of voice is. You may be cracking a joke, but it comes out wrong. So these are all things I think we really need to keep in mind when we're deciding who has access and just how much we want to put in there. You know, having pictures that might not be, you know, within the meeting certainly isn't a problem. It's the sort of thing that could have somebody from across the world go, oh yeah, now I know where that person is. We actually had a problem, which was not an email problem. It was before we got onto the internet, who ended up being stalked by somebody because he's quite a famous, you know, artist. And he had somebody who was really, really fond of him, and he was able to find out because of Quaker sources that he, you know, happened to be in Flagstaff. So it's the sort of thing that can be really tricky, and I think we should always err on the side of caution.
Well, I would like to err on the side of keeping to 90 minutes here. So if you'll indulge me for just a minute, let's just worship together for a very short time.